Welcome to everyone in the United States and around the world. This is Love, Truth, and Peace. I'm your host, Dr. Melody Harris Barrow, coming to you live from Miami. Welcome to today's broadcast. This show was created to equip nations and people with the knowledge and tools they need to improve, create, build, prosper, and change their environment so that they can effectively lead to a better future. Today's topic, the virtues of a man. And to discuss, I would like to introduce my co-host, Dr. Marcellus Hall. And our special guest, Dr. Kevin Storr, Associate Professor of Physics, Dr. King Silky Booker, philanthropist, life coach, and radio host, and Mr. Senna Alinko, MBA in Health Administration, host of the Progressive Mind Show and CEO of 105 Exchange radio station. Welcome, everyone. I am so happy to have you, all of you, with me today. This topic, I know some people have been calling me and say, this is the topic of the year, because I am telling you, this topic is something that needs to be addressed, especially at a time like today. So welcome, everyone. Silky, Sal, Professor Kevin, and Alenko. I want to start off by saying this: the virtues of a man. Women are dying to hear from all of you because this is a topic for us women. And I hope that you guys have your seatbelts on, because there's going to be a lot of comments today. I want to start off with Dr. Silky.
Yes.
The first question I want to start off with today about the topic. And this topic, again, it's a very sensitive topic. Mm-hmm. And I know our parents are probably looking and saying, you better answer the right question, because they are the one that instill all these virtues in us. So the first question is, what is virtue? What is a virtue when it comes to man? Are you men delivering? Like, look at you, you're ready. Are you men delivering what your parents have taught you, or maybe not, but you might have adopted along the way? What is virtue to you?
Okay, to me, I'm going to start for a couple things.
Yeah.
First thing, I think virtue in itself centers around character, a person's character. Yes. And second thing, I want people to keep in mind, we come from a country where virtue is preached and rarely followed. And that's in the words of one of my favorite authors, James Baldwin. So understanding that we come from a country that harps on virtues and tries to tell us how we should live and how we should represent ourselves, I think as a heterosexual Black man, I'm speaking from a heterosexual Black man perspective, okay. We have to redefine what a virtuous man is. And we have to redefine it based off of reclaiming our historical truth. So we have to restructure how we view what virtue is and what we consider to be virtue, because like I said, it centers around your character. So when we're looking about a virtuous man, who's teaching the youth and who are they looking at as that virtuous man. So I myself try to put my own experience and what led me from being virtuous to virtuous in my eyes. And what I would define as virtue is learning from my mistakes, becoming better from those mistakes, owning those mistakes, and then teaching those mistakes to someone younger than me, as so they don't repeat that behavior. It doesn't always go that way because, as we know, everybody's individual, likes to have their own opinion and their own way of defining themselves. But as a father, I try to instill a virtue that I've learned through trial and error. So I want to hear from all the fellow hosts today, and I'm going to be taking some notes because I have several things that I would like to say, especially some stuff from Aristotle. He's a Greek philosopher, and this theory that I looked up called the Thomas Aquinas theory. It's the natural law theory, which says that God made us with the tools we need to know what's good. So if we are innately born with those tools to know right and wrong, I call it our conscious, then I kind of see that as you go along your life's path and make mistakes, you're able to sort of define your own virtue. And your virtue is learning what you did right and what you did wrong. And then that, to me, defines you to be virtuous. Well, it was a little long-winded, but, I'm a talk show host.
That's all right.
We'll
step over to Professor Kevin. Same question. What is virtue to you?
So
virtue. Yeah.
So virtue to me, just as it was just initially said, deals with character, and there is a passage, and I just want to just reference it only because it's one that I've always liked. It's from Hebrews chapter 1, where it talks about Jesus, and it says that he is the brightness of his glory and the express image of his person, the person that being God. And the whole idea there is that Jesus is the express image of God. Yeah. Therefore, if you want to get an image or a display of God, then you'll be looking at Jesus. Mm-hmm. So what is this image? So this person is this Greek word character. It's literally the word character, which is transliterated as character. It's character. And character can be seen basically in terms of imagine, say, the statue, maybe like, say, the Lincoln Monument that's in Washington. And when it's very cold and it snows, the image of Lincoln is always the same. He's there sitting on that chair, staring in one direction, does not move. Birds can come and poop all over him, and he's going to sit there in that chair, staring in one direction. He's not going to move. People can come and petition and make noise and everything. He's going to sit there in that chair, stare in one direction, and doesn't move. That is definitely, that's what character is in Greek. It means statue, right? It means imprint. It is, if you consider even like a coin, and you see a person's image imprinted on that coin, regardless of what happens to that coin or what you expose it to, the image remains the same. So virtue is that unwavering, unshakable, unmovable, fixed character. And that's what virtue is to me.
Okay, thank you. Senna?
Thank you so much, Dr. Melida, for granting me the opportunity to be on your great platform. I want to say good evening and shout outs to all your audience. To me, the two great speakers have already given us great definition on what a virtue man is, or what virtue is when it comes to a man. I'm just going to speak it out of my heart as an African man. So it's just to say that their definitions like excellent. So I don't have to add anything just to their definitions because they've given us great definitions. So for me, as an African child living here in the U.S., I have grown to learn what a virtue man should be, and I think it's basically setting these standards, setting these high standards for yourself, not to fail in life, to be responsible to your family. Now, let me retract. First of all, to be submissive and connected to God. God is your head as a man. So you make sure that you reference him all the time as a man. And then you are setting the standards for you, high moral standards for yourself, so that others in your community can emulate that. What you want to be as a virtuous man is setting that example for the children in your family. Be responsible for your family, which includes your wife, your children, your extended family, your siblings, your parents, your grandparents. And lastly, being a committed person to the development of your entire community. To me, that those are the qualities that I have learned from old folks and from great people to be the qualities of a virtuous man.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. I am going to give Marcel the floor.
Oh, man.
You are a man.
Yeah.
You guys can relate. But I know what I want in a man. But I'm going to allow Marcellus to take over the floor and move on from there, because I want this conversation. I want us to interact with each other. And I know there's a lot of women out there watching. I want you to start submitting your questions or your statements as these handsome men define virtue. But go ahead, Sal.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. First, peace and blessings and love to all my brothers and to you, mother. Yeah. All right. Well, for those of you who know me, I'm more of a universal type of person. So I won't speak to any one particular higher power. But when I look at virtue, there are 8 different definitions of virtue in the dictionary. And I like to pull from the first and the 6th definition. The first one being moral excellence, as the brother just talked about, and the 6th one being valor. Those 2 are particularly important to me because when we look at moral excellence, a person being concerned with what's right and wrong, that alone says enough about expectations and the definition of virtue. It's a very ambiguous term because it is shaped by our morals, and our morals are shaped by our experiences. And being that we all come from different lands spanning across the earth, we all have different experiences and different definitions of what we would consider right or wrong. But I like to link that to the 6th definition, which is courage. And the reason why I make that connection is because there are things that we have taught as a young age. Those of you know me, I pretty much took care of myself as a young kid, and I was on my own from a very young age. So a lot of things I learned, my morals were pretty much experiences, from growing up, basically taking care of yourself to the gangs, to the streets, to the military, to being an educator, to being a professor myself. To being a parent, to being a husband, a brother. Each experience has shaped me and molded me to redefine myself as I gain more knowledge through my experiences. Yeah. But again, to tie in that 6th definition, I think the most important thing is to have courage. And that courage is important because you have to have that courage to make those adjustments, because we never get it right. We never know it all. We're constantly on a conquest to learn more and to do better. And I just think the most important aspect of virtue is having the courage to make those changes, to make those adjustments as we continue to grow and experience new things every day.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Anyone want to jump in as far as, let's talk about when you were growing up, did your parents instill the definition of virtue, how you should be as a man? Because oftentimes what Marcel just described, not everyone experienced what he experienced, but also he didn't experience having a father there to structure and to give him that structure, to tell him what is a man, and what does a man do, and so forth. And I believe that this is happening more often in our communities, in the Latin communities, in the Black community, and so forth. And we need to talk about this this today, because what's going on in the world, I have to say, I don't want to look back. I want to go forward. And for what we were taught, a lot of our children and us as well, what we were taught, we have changed a lot of things as we started going forward, because it does not, what I was taught back then is not applying to today. Right. So my mindset had to change to many things, you know. And as a woman, I was taught I had to stay in a marriage no matter what. First base, second base. I could be whatever, and I had to stay there. Well, that doesn't apply today, because at least I can become independent. My grandmother back then, she couldn't, you know, she didn't have how to go to work and so forth. Not all women, but majority did. So we need to now really get into this discussion as men, you know, because oftentimes what we're seeing today is police brutality. We have the history of slavery, colonialization, all of these things. But we still have to come back and talk about this, because this is a very difficult thing. And we talk, when Marcel talk about the gang banging and, you know, all this other stuff, we really need to realize that not all men are going to have all these virtues. And why? Because of that. So and I wanted to reintroduce also to the audience that Silky is African American, so is Sel, and Professor Kevin Storr, he's from the Bahamas, and Alinko, he's from Ghana, Africa. So Africa, Alinko. I know from what's happening to the men here in the United States, in the Caribbean, and so on. So kind of give me a background of how you were raised and the principles that you had to adopt, you know, as an African man. And I know you can't speak for all African men, but you can speak for yourself. Yeah.
Okay, so that's me, right?
That's you.
Okay, so and that's why I try to illustrate or to express in my definition for what a virtuous man, in my opinion, looks like. So in my experience growing up as a child was very, and again, I'm speaking from the African perspective, right? You are taught as a young man to be the protector of the home and the provider. I mean, those are the basic things. First of all, you are born into religions or spirituality. So that is with you. So every morning you have to pay homage to your higher being, and then take on responsibilities as a man and be a protector as well. I had to succumb to things that I necessarily didn't want to do, because as a young kid trying to grow up, just like any other young kid, I was more interested in playing with my friends, going to play soccer or going out there. But you are quickly reminded that just playing, you know, it's not what it is. You have to either go to the farm and help your dad, you know, on the farm, or if there's not a farm, then you have to help your dad with whatever business that he was in. So whilst he's going, you are going with him and learning the trade. You are, and then you are also pushed to go to school. I was caned and disciplined a lot if I did not do my homework. When I came back from school, the first thing that had to be done was my homework. Once that is done, then I make sure that I'm taking care of the chores in the house. So you are growing up you are indoctrinated with these types of attributes: work, protect, provide. You see, and it's always in you. And if you miss any of those, if you miss any of them, like actually, your own playtime or your happiness is not being considered, right?
It's secondary. It's secondary.
It's like, oh, so you're a young child, maybe you need to go play, or you need to go have fun, or you need to go sleep over your friend's house. No. Okay, so it's a rigorous training that you have to go through. You are also taught as a man, as a young man, that, so this might be negative or positive based on who's listening. You're taught as a young man not to go to the kitchen because the women are in the kitchen controlling stuff. So
Right.
when you go there, you're going to interrupt how they work. So it's still in your head. And so when you even attempt to go to the kitchen to give a helping hand to your mom or your sister, they would actually drive you out of the kitchen. They'll be like, this is not a man's place. Listen, I cannot tell you how many times I have heard that this is not a man's place when it comes to the kitchen.
Yes.
They call you names that will make you feel so bad you don't want to go to the kitchen again.
I like that.
All you see about the kitchen and all you know about the kitchen is that I have to provide for the kitchen, but I don't have to be in there.
Okay. I like that. You provide. Yeah.
You provide. You don't go to the pot. You don't go near to the pot and try to sell all that. So you agree, and then you don't ever touch a woman, be outside or in the house. You cannot touch, like lay your hands on your sister, or talk rudely to your sister, or be seen outside yelling at a woman, right? So and because you are told that you are man.
When you say you can't touch a woman, that means you can't hit her.
Yeah, lay hands, like hit her.
Lay hands and hit her. Right.
So,
I just wanted to clarify that for the audience.
Yeah, because there's a different touch too, right? There's the other touch.
Right. I just wanted to make sure what touch it was.
So you are ingrained, and anytime you do that, even ice cream. Let me tell you this might sound funny. If you were seen trying to share ice cream or trying to, they'd be like, why are you doing that? Give it to the lady. Why are you a man trying to eat ice cream or trying to, what I'm saying? Like, so at any time you do anything, the African man thinks that is a space for the woman who are being chastised, who are being disgraced, sometimes you are beaten. So you grow up and all you know is I got to be as masculine as much as possible, and not go close to anywhere the woman has more of territorial advantage at, right? So that disparity is made to you very clear at a young age. So all you know to do for the woman is to be her provider, her protector, and basically that's it. It has its advantages and disadvantages, but as a child growing in Africa, those were some of the things that it was just imbibed in me.
Yeah, it has a lot of disadvantage and advantage, like you say, because today we want men in the kitchen to help. You are welcome to come in my kitchen. You are welcome to cook, and I'm going to tell you why. And this is why I wanted someone from Africa, the Caribbean, and the United States, because everything that you said, this is also my country in Latin America. Okay, I'm going to have Kevin talk about it as far as the Caribbean, because it is very difficult when you talk about all of the virtues, but in today's society, things are different. But when you talk about laying hands on a woman, I know for a fact that there's a lot of African men beats on their women. A lot of African men disrespect their women. That happens, and it is continuing to happen, but it wasn't as though that they were not taught to do so. So the machismo, we call it the machismo. I have to have my wife do this, do that, and those virtues are out the door. So I want to go quickly to Kevin, because Kevin is from the Caribbean, he's from Bahamas, and I know there might be some similarities of what Senna just mentioned.
Well, so in our case, masculine virtue was taught in schools, churches, and also in the home. So I can recall, and I can't speak for how it is now, but growing up
Yes.
in the Bahamas, whenever we were in school, from primary school, grade 1, whenever we formed lines, we formed two queues, right? One for the male, one for the female, and the ladies always walked ahead of us, and one of the guys had to go to the door and hold the door for all of the young ladies to pass through. If there was any event that was going on, that all of the young ladies, they were always permitted to go in first. And then at certain events, we had to go and hold the chairs behind the young lady, let her sit,
Yes.
and push
My
the chair.
husband still does that. Yeah, go ahead.
Push the chair in, right? So, and again, this is what we were taught in school, much like prayer was a part of school. So every morning before school began, we always prayed. Before lunch break, we always prayed. When school ended, we always prayed. Once a week in the school, we would have what's called assembly, which was basically a miniature church service, where each classroom would conduct the church service, and there would be a message. We'll sing some hymns or something like that, along those lines. In home, church was an integral part of life, whereby even if your parents did not go to church, you went to church.
That's right.
You were sent to church. You meet many of, and because also in the school, the Bible was taught. We were taught the Bible from kindergarten right up to grade 12. We had to take national exams on the Bible. For our senior exams, we had to study using commentaries. And so you meet an average person in the Bahamas, a male, and regardless of maybe what their moorings may be, you'll be surprised as to what knowledge they have of the scripture. Maybe they may not be living it, but what knowledge they have of it. When I was growing up, you can't do this now, but in public, if you were misbehaving, any adult would pull up on the side of the road, and they would discipline you. And if they did, you would not go home and tell your parents, because if they found out, then you would get an additional form of discipline. In school, we were disciplined using meter sticks, yardsticks, bamboo.
Everything they can put their hands on. Yes.
Everything. Yes. Now, so with all of that, I was fortunate in that I started attending a church at a very young age called Bahamas Faith Ministries, pastored by Dr. Miles Monroe, who unfortunately is no longer with us. He died in 2014. And during that time, because of the issues that he saw with fatherlessness and also with young men, for over a year, he taught every Sunday and on Saturday on the purpose of what he called the male man. It wasn't just a man, but a male man. What he taught us was that all of us are man, that man is spirit, that there's a male man and there's a female man. Now, these are the basics, binary, all of the other stuff right now that's presented in America and such. I mean, everyone else can work through that. So this is what we were taught. And so we were taught that as men, we are to work, cultivate, and to protect. And that cultivation went beyond just in terms of, say, job, but rather that whatever environment that we found ourselves in, that our job was to cultivate that environment or to make more out of it. So even in terms of our relationships, in dealing with women, whether, say, for example, you're married, that one of our jobs is to help to cultivate women. It's not that that we are the woman's Lord and master, but the whole idea is that what we are, the value that we bring is supposed to help enhance the value of others. So therefore, even in terms of approaching marriage, what we were taught is this, that that there is no, we were told, and we were told never to refer to a wife or husband as our better half. That we were taught that there's no such thing as a half, that you do not take another person and combine them with yourself to make a whole. Otherwise, you are an incomplete person looking for completion in someone else. But rather instead, that as men, we were taught that we are supposed to be single individuals. And as single, we were told that we are to be separate, unique, and whole. And therefore, as a man who is a separate, unique, and whole individual, that we are to combine with a separate, unique, and whole woman, and that combination gives you a unity but the unity does not in any form dilute the individuality of the other person. So for us, there's a form of toxic masculinity that's found in some Bahamian men, that as you go back throughout the decades, whereby in terms of what they consider roles of men and women to be, growing up, we were not discouraged as men as far as or boys being inside the kitchen.
Yes.
If you wanted to help, you can go ahead and help. Sometimes you are called on to help. And then the final thing is that in terms of a man, one of the things I think about is that there's this passage, and I refer to it because it's a standard, where it talks about how it says, women, wives, submit yourselves to your husbands. And normally when that verse is heard, individuals get really scared and everything about it. And it's actually, it's a very beautiful thing, because prior to that, a few verses up, it says that we are to submit ourselves to each other, right? Then 2 verses later, it says that wives, submit yourselves to your husbands. So the same submission to each other is to wives and husbands. And this word submit is actually a Greek word, as hypostasis, and it literally means to place in order. And so as a physicist, the example I like to show is this. If you take the 10 digits, the 10 numbers of our decimal system, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If I say, I would like for you to arrange these numbers in ascending order, you would start with 0 and go up to 9. If I say arrange in descending order, you will start with 9 and go to 0. I could say arrange with the odd numbers first, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Now, notice that depending on what I ask for, those same 10 digits, the order changes. So in terms of when we are to submit ourselves to each other or to place ourselves in order, it means then that when something pops up, it may very well be that the wife is the one who has preeminence, knowledge, expertise in that area. Therefore, as a husband, I submit myself to her in that capacity. Or if it's something that pertains to physics or mathematics, generally then in the household, they will submit themselves to me. And in so doing, what we were taught as far as the church there is that each one of us has value, and our job is to see the value of every individual. But then now, as say as a leader in the home, or just like say maybe a CEO in a company, that you see the skills, you see the abilities of the different employees, and you help to position them, and you provide them the outlet and the opportunity to actually thrive, to be best, and to shine. And so this is a part of how I grew up, what I was taught as a teenager, that I try to implement today.
Very interesting. I love that analogy. Some of our Carol Marshall, she also loves the analogy, and Gloria Hall, she said that is very interesting. It is. Silky, Dr. Silky, I'm sorry. You've heard, I saw you going, oh my God, when Senna was speaking, and you were also doing the same thing when Professor Starr was speaking. And that is because this is why I wanted the different cultures and people from different countries here, the Caribbean, Africa, and you notice the similarities. Now you're from here, America, and I'm gonna also have Sel, because he's here from America, also the United States. What do you think about that?
Okay, first of all, we need to put some black men reconditioning camps in Africa. And second of all, thank you to Kevin. I know mathematically now why my marriage didn't work. Thank you, brother. With that being said, I think as black men in America, we are battling commercialized masculinity propaganda. So what you guys have, your media outlets, the way in which black men are portrayed in your countries, I'm shocked. Like, I'm shocked by what you're telling me. We're not portrayed that way. We know that Hollywood controls and the media kind of controls the propaganda placed on black men. We know that. So even this conversation is a battle against commercialized masculinity, because as a black man, I had both my parents, but my dad didn't have a dad. So my dad wasn't a good father in terms of knowing how to raise me the correct way to respect women. So, and I will say later on in my life, when I got in the Air Force, I had what I would consider to be moral exemplars. These are men that I looked at because they showed they cared about me. Now, these men are the ones that influenced me to kind of question my upbringing and said, whoa, that wasn't right. Or I shouldn't have been raised that way. Or maybe I shouldn't talk to women that way. Or, you know, because once my dad worked a lot, the streets was where I was at. So I was hanging out. So my perception of women was based off of the girls that I ran into. And when you're in the street, most of the time you're going to meet girls that are in the street. So as they say, they belong to the streets. So you start to learn how to treat women based off of the women that are attracted to you in that environment. So as you start to grow on with your life and you venture outside of your hood or prospective state or wherever you're from, then you start to realize, dang, all women ain't the same. Then you start to realize, well, some of them are the same. But you have to learn from black men or whoever your moral exemplar is. You have to learn from them, I think, how to treat a man. And I want to say this before I get to that I've never seen a virtuous man become virtuous without the love, respect, and patience of a strong, great woman. So every virtuous man that I know got a strong woman behind him. So I do equate virtuous men to virtuous women.
Yeah.
With that being said, we'll talk a little about. I'm gonna digress a little bit, but we alluded yesterday. I was talking to you about the single parent home. Now I want to say that yes, the man has a responsibility, but let's just say there are a lot of single parent homes where the man and the woman aren't together. They created a baby and they are not together. Now, a lot of people say, well, just call and be in the baby life and this and that. But we all know that you have to be there. At the end of the day, it's still being there. So let's just say that the whole responsibility, this is hypothetical, but realistic in its own, women have the sole responsibility of raising that young man without a father. I think that woman could instill, if she doesn't resent the father and try to hold that over the child, that woman now has a clean slate to raise the perfect man for all those good women out there. Now, why are there so many shitty men? Because can we blame it on the single parent household? You couldn't. That's not for a debate argument. That's what we having this conversation for. But I just want to say solely that for the single parent home, man or woman, because I know me and my son's mother weren't together, so he was with me majority of his life until I deployed, et cetera, et cetera. So I know I had a chance more to instill my values in him than she did. But I also know I instilled some of my bad traits in him because of the lack of guidance I had earlier on. So going back and trying to erase that and recorrect that's the journey we on now with my son out older. But I still accredit that to having a moral exemplar, men that even came from single parent homes, that were able to live through their example, through their mistakes, trials, tribulations, in becoming a virtuous man. So I became a virtuous man over time. But earlier on, I was not virtuous. You hear me? I was into the shake dances, as they call them. I was just into a lot of bad things, and it took a while for me to come up out of that. And I would think I accredit solely to me changing on education. I was not educated at all the way that I thought I was. I was educated from the streets. Now I was very street smart, but when I decided to go to college, that's when it opened up my mind to a whole nother world I didn't even know existed. And that's what's missing is there is no information being passed down to these young black
From
men
one generation to the next. Yeah.
or men in general on how to be a virtuous man. And could a woman teach a man to be virtuous? Hell yes. Yes, they can.
Yes.
Yeah.
But why do we still have so many shitty men? That is the question, because we're battling again commercialized masculine propaganda. So we have to stop thinking and constructing this virtuous man perspective off of TV, because we all know that we are characterized by our past. Like sometimes I don't even like talking about my past, because I feel like if I die, that's all they're gonna talk about. So you're almost pressured in America to present yourself as perfect. So, you know, even to my fans and followers now, you know, I have a hard time revealing things about myself just because I never know when I'm going to have to trickle back over into that commercialized arena that it isn't controlled by us. So I always have to keep that in the back of my mind that, yeah, I can look the way I want, but I always have to watch what comes out of my mouth. I always have to, especially outside of my personal space. And so is the real me virtuous compared to the public me? That's for debate. But I do know that the way that I am forced to portray myself due to commercialized masculinity and virtue, I do have a public persona and I got a personal persona. And only those people that I trust are going to know me personally. Now, the people that have known me on my path to change, of course, they're going to have a different perspective of King Silky, Dr. King Silky, my bad. But with that being said, those people, all I can do is apologize and hope that they see the new me. But if they don't, I'm not worried about them seeing
You have to move on.
Right. I'm worried about the youth that are in the foster homes, which I like to take care of. I'm worried about the youth in those juvenile centers that I like to take care of, especially in England, because them are my people over there. Shout out to y'all, because the Black community over there is also learning, you know, about the different cultural difference through me. And so I'm learning just by this. So, you know, I would love to have a Black man from Britain on here, because they are way different to us, because they have a more of a connection to Africa than we do. Yes. A lot of them, you know, Jamaica is territory of England. There's a lot of Caribbean countries, the territory of England. So they have a different upbringing. And like he was saying with the whole Bible and the pulling out the chairs, what? Like that's unheard of, you know, like for me anyway. But, you know, I learned about pulling out chairs and stuff through movies. You know, I learned through reading books on romance. So
one of the things I think, Silky, is that, and I thought about this today, maybe we need to have a curriculum in schools about virtues, and for women, for young girls, and for young men. I think these are things that we need to begin to talk about, or even in our organization, teaching our children in our communities. I do believe that these are things that we need to implement, because we cannot allow always for the government to teach us everything. We have to come together in our communities, and we have to implement these things through our organizations. I want to pass this on to Seth.
Excuse me, Melita, can I just, I just want to make, saying that because we may have some people who are watching from Jamaica. So just a quick minor clarification that so Jamaica is not a territory of the UK.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
Right. So so Jamaica has been independent since '62.
Yep.
However, they are part of what's called the Commonwealth.
Okay.
Yes. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you for that correction. You're right about that.
Thank you. Sal?
Oh man. Oh man. Well, I'm gonna speak carefully. You know, as they say, if
speak freely, my brother.
If our tongues were made of glass, how carefully we would speak. So,
can I just say this, Dr. Marcellus? I want you to be truthful.
I will be.
I want you to be truthful. Because this is about love, truth, and peace. And we need to bring this to the audience truthfully. Go ahead.
I feel you.
I will. I'm gonna be out.
And I know you.
I'm gonna be nothing but honest. But I like to give it through my perspective because we can only see with the eyes we were given. That's why for me myself, I'm not too big on just institutions too much, and I know that sounds
Yeah.
like an oxymoron considering that I am a professor, but I put it like this. You got 50 states in America, 14 territories, 54 countries in Africa. You got about 13 nations, 12 territories in the Caribbean. How can we speak for anybody other than our own? There are millions of people that have different experiences on a daily basis that we cannot resonate with. We cannot identify. We can't communicate their experiences. So I can't even speak for a person of color in America. I'm from America, yes, but I'm French, Moroccan, and Native American. I was taken in by a Samoan family when I was 14 and was raised by them. I grew up and I've lived out of America since I was 17 years old. I married into a woman that's from Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia at the time. So, I don't have the traditional, what you would call, say, the traditional brothers' views in America. But what I say is this, that what I see, to me, honestly, is just subjection, indoctrination on so many levels, from all our different nations that we all are from. What we were given by our parents was given to them. So we can say that most of what we were even given was not really organic, to be honest. And then you look at the cultural evolution today, things demand a change because, for example, in America, you live in a country where most time two parents are working, sometimes two jobs. So that whole mindset of a man's place and a woman's place, it doesn't necessarily resonate with everybody. Everyone's not in that same situation. So I just think that it's a very delicate issue, and we can really only speak from our own perspectives. And I say that you got to figure out what it is that you want out of life, the type of person that you want to be, and the type of life that you want to live. And I think that's best lived with people like-minded. So you got to go through those experiences where you come across people that you share certain commonalities, certain chemistry on an intellectual level. And from there, you can move together in a progressive state towards where you're headed. But then you may come across some other virtuous people who are virtuous in their own right, but they moving in a different direction. And that's okay, too. So, I don't really think it's any one particular way to do this thing called life. First of all, life is a game that we all play, but nobody makes it out alive. So in the meantime, between time, we got to find a way to live a peaceful life that resonates best with us. And I think that's really going to come down to your own particular perspective on life, what it is that you want, how you choose to live, and really what works best for you. My only true rule of thumb to life is, I don't do anything that intentionally opposes on anyone else. Other than that, as far as what's right or wrong, who can say? Who honestly, who can say? I may not agree with some things in certain countries in Africa, but how can I discount a person in Africa or a person in Asia or anywhere? That's their culture. That's what they were taught since they were born. And if I was born there, I'd probably be the same way. And they were born where I was born, they might be the same way as I am. So, all of our perspectives is just a matter of subjection, happenstance, where we happen to be born, the families we happen to be born into, and experiences we had. And that pretty much trickled us into where we are today. So, again, I say I just look at it from that perspective. You got to find out what works best for you, live a virtuous life by your standards, what you want out of life, and build those connections with people that are moving in the same direction as you. However, love, support, and respect people who do it differently because their position is based on their experiences.
Yes, I totally agree. And Alinka, you wanted to say something?
I don't know if it's my turn to speak, but I just wanted to
No,
say.
go ahead.
Okay. No, thanks. I mean, great contributions so far. I guess I want to look at it from this angle. So looking at the definitions that we gave with regards to what a virtuous man is, now the opposite is also true because most men will say, I want a virtuous woman, right? because we can understand the definition for a virtuous woman, and we want those attributes, we want those qualities. So again, the reverse is true. They also would want a virtuous man, right? And so if those attributes and qualities are necessary and are good, then what it means is that our society, the Black community, have to produce a lot of virtuous men, right? And it will be good, because again, if you look at it again from my definition, you see, again, I always want to take my experience back home. One of the things, but before I do that, I just wanted to say that yes, African men are taught and trained never to lay a hand on a woman, regardless. But Dr. Mel, you rightly said, some do it. As you know, in every situation there are exceptions. Now, if you're ever caught doing that, the whole community would reject you. You would know your friends. Your friends will call you names. Your family will call you names. Your own parents will call you names. Like, you will know that you are the outcast in the community if you were caught doing that. Unless, of course, it's subtle, and once in a while you see these things. It's very subtle. It's once in a while situation. Again, there are always exceptions. However, it's not to say that there are negatives within the upbringing of the African man, right? If we have to push for more virtuous men because of all the qualities that a virtuous man is supposed to carry, at the end of the day, what's going to happen is that, as I said, we're going to have a better and greater community. Because again, in my head, one of the attributes is being community oriented. See, back in Africa, right? There are people who are affluent, and there are people who probably averagely have made it. But a lot of times, though, the ones that have community recognition, a lot of respect from everybody, are people who have some wealth and don't only share their wealth, or have some with some level of prosperity, and do not only use it for their benefit, but make sure that the people around them benefit off of it. And you realize that those people, even though they might not be that super affluent, even though they might not have all the charisma, because they have that extra virtue or that other attribute of virtuousness, which is going beyond, aside setting that moral standard for yourself, aside being the provider, aside being the protector, you are going above yourself to make sure that you are taking care of the things that are outside your home, which is maybe your neighbor's child who may be struggling. You can just go to your neighbor and say, hey, I see your child struggling. Maybe we can contribute, or we can do ABC to help your child. Hey, I see you don't have a job, or I see that your family or your brother or your friend might be struggling this. How can I help you? Hey, can you come over to my house and grab some food? Like, you going outside your I'll say circles, right? And so these attributes in a virtuous man only goes to build a society and to make it better. And so I feel like again, our community has to push more of that. And I'm not saying that it's only in the African community, but I think it's all over in the black anywhere there are black people. I think that they have these virtues too. I wouldn't say it's only in the black community or the black race. I say other races have these type of attributes too. So I feel like we need to maybe advocate for more of this. Now, one last point to the point of my brother made, my brother in the hat, King.
King, yeah.
Oh, no, Dr. King, yes, Dr. King. He made a very great point, just like everybody else, just like the other guys. In that, she said, a virtuous man is not only made by a man, but a woman. And that's very true. See, I am the one of the exceptions of not growing up in a marital home, because my dad left, and you hardly see that. In Africa, you hardly see the dads leaving. It's the man staying, regardless, right? Regardless. but I'm 1 out of 100 that had to do with that. But guess what? Guess who instilled all these virtuous attributes that I believe that I have. And if nobody knows me, Dr. Mel knows me, and he knows that I have some small little virtuous attributes. So
Yes,
it's working
I
for me.
defend you. Yes, you do.
Thank you. No, but my mom would always tell me, don't yell at your sisters. When I was young, siblings rivalry, right? Siblings, we quarrel, we argue. But she was the one that taught me that, lady, you can't argue with that. You can't argue with your sister. Like when she says it, I'm like, why she says stuff to me? Why can't I say stuff back to her? But even again at a tender age, she said it so many times. She said, when you're talking to your sister, use a lower tone. Naturally, I'm allowed. I have a loud.
Respect. It's about respect. Yes.
Right. So but again, I didn't know that those were respect attributes she was trying to instill in me. Because she wouldn't say, "Oh, you have to respect your sister." No, she would say.
But can I ask you? Let me step in there for a second. Now, she was teaching you how to treat a woman.
Right. Exactly.
Now, because a lot of times our parents are teaching us certain things. Like in your case, she's teaching you how to treat a woman. Now, when you pass on to that, you got married and so on. Did you do the same thing?
Yes. So I did the same thing. No, seriously. Even till date,
We're trained.
No, exactly. You were trained to do that. So you can't, and you realize that even what I grew up to understand was that she was not training me to only handle my sisters, but women in general.
Exactly.
And so when I grew up, that stayed with me, right? And so even when I have a situation where I have to argue, I cannot argue with a woman. I cannot say anything back to a woman because in my head it's a no, right? Even when I can and I have to, I cannot say what I was taught was walk away. If you're angry, if she's pissing you off, walk away. So I have grown to, kind of like, it's just part of me now. So thank you, Brother Kane, for bringing that out, because our women, our mothers have all the strongest bone behind us, because even though Doc might say it and Doc says it with some kind of authoritarian voice, don't do that, the mother, the auntie, the sister breaks it down for you. Even though you might be hard-headed, they'll let you know why you don't have to do that. And it just again, it's hard taking it as a child because you can't talk back, you want to argue and stuff. But when you grow up, you kind of place a lot of value on that. You just see the value in all that stuff that you had to take growing up. So, Brother Kane, thank you so much for bringing that point. I just wanted to elaborate.
Very good. Now we're coming to the end of our show. This is, I thank all of you so much. I've had the same experience as a woman growing up. I was told all what not to do. I was even never heard to love myself. And this goes out for the women that are listening to me. We were never taught to love ourselves. We were taught to love everyone else. We were taught to love our father, our mother, our neighbors, our bosses, everyone, but we were never taught to love ourselves. When it comes to virtues, it's a very difficult thing for women also, because we have been also taught in different countries, no matter how abusive a man is towards you, we have to stay there. And that's why there's so many women in the world today that have died, that are still being abused, still being raped, scared to open up and say who did what. We have gone through hell and came back as women. And this show is about men virtues. But one of the things is that I want to mention tonight is that it goes both ways. A woman tendency is to say, I want a man to have all these qualities, all these characteristics. But the thing is, do we have the very characteristics that we're asking from them? We're asking them to be a good man, to be respectful, to be all these things, but are we doing the same thing? So one of the things that I've learned in my second marriage, is that even before I got married, I did ask, do you do this? Do you do that? Do you dump the garbage? Do you open up the door for me? Do you do all these things? And if he had said no, I wouldn't be with him, because these are the things that I am asking for a man. These are the things that I feel comfortable being with a man. And another thing is, one thing my husband can say, I'm always cooking, I'm always doing these things, as busy as I am. Even if I travel, honestly, I will cook a week of food, put it in the freezer, and he's a happy man. So that's why you always see him happy, joyful. Why? Because
that's very true.
That I'm getting from him, I'm always giving him in a different way. So when women tell me, why are you doing that, Dr. Barrow? You're too busy to do that. Well, I want a happy home. I want a home that I can feel happy and joyful. And if I don't want him to curse at me, I will not curse at him. I demand the very respect that I'm asking him for me. I turn it back over. So women, if you are looking for a virtuous man with all these qualities, you have to have also the same virtues that you're asking for.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Go ahead.
Dr. Mel, I know your show has ended, and this may not be relevant, but I just want to leave something with your audience so they can laugh.
And I'm going to have you do that. Yes.
This is just something they can laugh at and just But okay, so one of the again qualities that is instilled in an African man in order to make you that virtuous man that you want to be in the society. Again, pushing your head towards that community orientation and being the leader in your community and all that, putting together. They do it in such a way that they cannot tell you. So these are the words they use for you. They tell you a man must be fearful and ugly. Listen to this. They tell you a man must be fearful and ugly. This is what they're trying to say. This is, not literally. They're trying to tell you that be so selfless that you're not even thinking about your looks and how detailed, and all that. That's how selfless they want you to be to your family and to your community. And I just want, but that word just came to my mind. Ugly and fearful. So when I came to America, when I grew up, I'm like, maybe I have to undo that. I can't be looking ugly and fearful. but I thought it was funny. But again, that is the extent to which trying to instill that virtuousness in a man. And I feel like this is a very, very great topic. And I'm not saying that African training is the best. I'm just saying that virtuousness and the idea of it, right, the concept of it, that we all men, and most importantly, specifically Black men, right? I think that this topic is something that is very interesting. And the more we push towards these values, we may not all have it. I don't have it all, but the more I listen to you and have discussions with brothers like this, I pick ideas, I pick qualities, and I think that it betters all of us, so we can be the great men that our women want, and we can build a bigger and a better society for ourselves. That's what I want to say.
I want to say I thank my mom for raising me to be a virtuous man. Thank you, Mama. Yes. And Barrow, you need to send me some of them senoritas. You know what I'm saying? King Silky ready.
Awesome. In closing, 30 seconds, Kevin, Professor Kevin, go ahead. Closing.
Yeah. So the thing I would like to leave with everyone is that in terms of who we are, there are a plethora of things that goes up to making who we are. And earlier on there was mention of conscience. And even as a virtuous man does function with conscience, however, conscience, of course, can also be misleading. And so conscience is our inborn sense of discernment. But however, that inborn sense of discernment has to be programmed, if you will. So depending on the culture in which you are in, that your conscience would allow you to hit a woman. Your conscience may allow you to enter someone else's home. And so therefore, when there isn't a more or less a common moral standard, if you will, in terms of how we function, then one person's conscience can allow them to actually impede on another, and so therefore, one of the things that especially as an individual that grew up in one country and came to another country, is that I had to address what my conscience permitted me to do and to say in the Bahamas that's not here. So I'll give you an example. I'll end it here. Growing up in the Bahamas, the N-word is used all the time. If you are a white person, you are a white. If you are this, it doesn't matter. When I came here, I was using it, and some of my friends, I mean, they almost lost it. I didn't understand what was going on. Like, what's the problem, right? Because then my conscience permitted me to do it. Yeah. Then when I came here in the United States, I found that for myself that I felt as though that we all may have the same color, but again, growing up in different cultures is a little bit different. That at home, our country, it's about 93% African American. So our judges are of color. The people in leadership they're of color. And so coming here and then noticing that, okay, this becomes maybe something that culturally that you're aspiring to, that you want to see more individuals of color in leadership and so forth, that I had to begin to understand the North American dynamic as opposed to the Bahamian. So therefore, I would impress on everyone that as much as we become settled with our virtues, that we must be careful to note how our virtues, they may be culturally biased, they may be very good in our culture, but however, they don't become fixtures whereby they can be modified or adjusted based on where you're living. We're not saying that you are dismissing yourself, but you don't want your culture and your virtue to actually denigrate someone else who is actually moving towards developing and improving on their own culture and virtue.
Absolutely.
Very good.
Excellent.
Dr. Marcellus?
Well, it's been really great to hear everyone's different inputs. I really like it. And I guess for me as a scientist of education and world religion by trade, and not being a religious man at that, it really gives me a very objective view. And again, I only really speak from myself and my own experience, because it's very difficult to say how we should be by the culture. I mean, cultures are dynamic and they change. You can have a culture within a household. You can have a different culture in every household on the same street. You understand what I'm saying? So when you look at the terms of culture and what it means and what it equates to, that really is going to really resonate within your inner circle. Mm-hmm. So, with that, I just leave it as, again, my personal thought is, finding what it is for you, what works for you. One thing that I always find domineering is that when we reference the women, it's the kitchen. When we reference the man, it's the provider. And I think that culturally, if you want to put it historically, I'd rather say, that puts such limitations on us. Why is it when it comes to a woman and what a woman's role is, it's limited to the kitchen? Exactly. Like I just think that's so limiting. Like there's so much that you can do. You know how many women scientists and doctors and philanthropists and writers you have. Why is it limited to that's where a woman's place is? Some of the biggest scientific revolutionary breakthroughs have been by women. And then the same thing from a man. I love to cook.
Yes,
I love it. I love to do it. So I just really think that, people have to look within themselves, because even when you look for the value and the definition of self in somebody else, that don't even make sense. Because first of all, it begins with self. Within self, you look inward, not outward. So, at any time you begin to look outward, not saying other people don't have very attractive and good personas, but that's based on their life. Yes. And that's based on what works for them. Mm-hmm. And the only life that you can live is your own. And I just really think that people stop putting so much power in other people in other people's doctrine and other people's beliefs and start putting it in yourself. What about you? You were born with a gift, and you need to explore that. So that's just my personal perspective, being how my view on the world being universal. But at the same time, I respect that people come from different backgrounds, and we're going to all have different perspectives based on our experiences.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you. Did you want to say something really quick?
I like to leave with something deep.
Yes.
I want everybody to focus on this word called eudaimonia. And it's this is a word that I like, and I try to use this word, and it's spelled EUDAIMONIA, eudaimonia. And it's basically the satisfaction of knowing you've accomplished a lot, and you've pushed yourself to be the very best person you can be. And that alludes to what Dr. Marcellus said. It's just, like I said, define your own virtue by being a good person. Like I said, I've had role models to show me how to be a good person. Yes. And that's what made me turn into a virtuous man. And I'm looking for a virtuous woman. So thank you, Dr. Barrow, for saying those high points about, the virtuous woman. I was clapping over here because you are definitely honing in on something. And I hope we get to come back and have this conversation with women as well.
Yes, we will. We will. Matter of fact, we're going to have we're going to have women and men together talking about this. Because I think it's important for us to move on and for you to move on as men in the world. There are so many different virtues that we have to, there's so many challenges, I should say. But one of the things is that I have changed a lot. I have grown a lot. It is because I've decided to create my own virtues in my life that works for me. That works for me. I've read 10 virtues from Christianity, 3 from this place and that place. Well, most of them don't work for me. What works for me is my joy and his joy. And there's so many friends that would come over and say, Papi, why are you washing the dishes? That's a woman thing. And he says, my wife cooked, and I feel that this is what I can do to cooperate. And we both happy, because when I get in that kitchen, things all over the place, and he comes right in, and meanwhile I'm cooking, he's cleaning. So whatever works in my home, that is what I am going to do.
Can I add to that? Can I add to that? I can resonate with that, because when I was married, even though as an African child, I was taught vehemently, don't touch that, don't wash dishes, don't wash her clothes. Don't. When I grew up, I mean, that's, I was taught, right? But when I grew up, based on what you were saying, I learned my new virtues in addition to the good ones, right? And I dropped some of them because I realized that in the past, some things work for some people. I mean, back in the day, but nowadays, when I'm grown and I know better, that is not the right thing to do. When I was married for 7 years, that was not a single time that my ex had to do laundry. She didn't even know how the thing worked. It's just to say that
right.
I knew how to do wash because I had sisters growing up. I washed all their clothes all the time, so I was just, I knew how to do it very well. So I said, I'll take care of that. Where my mom taught me how to cook. So I'm like, to the point where my ex was, you are too self-sufficient for my liking. I don't like that. You can cook. So it's just going to the point that what you said about Papi.
Yes.
If you know how to do it, I mean, if you're a man, you don't know how to cook, don't go mess up, the ingredients, learn how to cook. But I know how to cook, so I take it upon myself to do it even when she can do it. So it's just to buttress the point that even though you may have learned some things or grew up on some things, you always have the opportunity to better yourself, again, by picking your own good virtue. So I just wanted to add to what you just said.
Right. And even to say this, and we're going to go, is to say, I travel the world. I'm always traveling. And there are many men that ask Papi, how do you tolerate her traveling all over the world, and she's not home, and she's not this, and how can you be with a woman like that? And his answer is always, it takes a man to be with a woman like her. And I will close on that note.
Yes.
I don't.
Yes.
Thank you. My dear audience, I have a man, a virtuous man, Fabi.
Yeah.
I love you.
And he's always smiling.
And he's always smiling. And that's because he knows what he have.
I know. I know.
Woman.
Thank you so much, Dr. Marcella Call.
Thank you.
Dr.
Thank you.
Silky Booker.
Thank you.
Mr. Alinko Sena, and Professor Kevin Storr. Thank you, all of you, for coming on this show. Love, truth, and peace. May God bless all of you. And tune in with us on Monday. Actually, that's our Spanish show. Tune in with us then. Thank you and good night.
I don't
All
understand.
right.